Hi Tanisha, how you doing? Yeah, you're definitely getting it here. I think that the hierarchy relationships you're establishing right now are very, very subtle. So I'd like to see you push them a little bit. Let's talk about the first piece where you've just created hierarchy based on proximity and placement without any weight or scale changes, and that's good. One thing I would recognize here, and it doesn't matter what these words say, as we look at this, there's some generalizations that we can make. Number one, we can generalize that none of these is more important than the other, the way that you have this set up here. The other thing is that this is related to itself, but is not related or not directly related to these. This seems to be a group, this seems to be a group, and this seems to be a group. However, within those groups, there's some things like this current is letting between these two lines right here. Are these two lines related? And if so, let's get that letting a little closer to make the proximity closer to indicate further that those two lines are related, but maybe different than these two. So basically, within these three subgroups, these three groups, one group, two group, three groups, there are some subgroups. So in this group right here, it almost looks like, are these related? Okay, do you see what I'm saying? It seems like these two lines are further away from these two lines, but these two lines are closer together than these sets of lines. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're going to establish relationships, make sure that they're very obvious to the viewer. For example, this is much better. This is definitely set away from this. So we know the designer wants us to look at this alone. We know the designer finds these are related. This area right here has a relationship to each other. The whole typographic composition is related to each other, but this has a separate relationship, this has a separate relationship, and this does. These are these three subgroups that I mentioned in the first iteration. Again, though, in these individual little compositions, there are some hierarchy issues. For example, there's no difference here in proximity. There's nothing that's closer or further than the others. So right now, this little composition right here has no hierarchy at all. So not only do you separate your composition into little compositions, you also establish hierarchy and alignment within those little mini compositions within the main composition. Hope that makes sense. I think this is good. You're starting to create some varying hierarchy techniques, and that's good. Keep working those. This, I think, is really super underdeveloped. This is one that's saying, hey, man, go nuts here. You can do whatever you want on this one. And I think that you could really push scale and size on this one. I mean, really push scale and size. Experiment and play with that image. You got that image bleeding, but maybe bleed it maybe bigger, maybe it's definitely not smaller. It's pretty tiny already. I would say that one thing I see is you're very, very, very safe. It seems like you're not taking many chances, and a lot of times in graphic design you want to take some chances, especially in this one right here. Okay, so I know I'm not directing you to do this, do this, do this, and do this, and I don't want to do that because I want you to learn these established relationships by yourself by experimenting. So I'm not going to say, hey, okay, Tanisha, you need to make this bigger, you need to make this smaller, you need to move this here and this here. All I can say is that in your second iteration, your final iteration of this assignment, things are going to come much, much, much more naturally. So just keep working those relationships, okay? And keep read through these assignment specifications again, and really take a look at those words. For example, in the third piece, you're using multiple contrasts of weight and scale. You may use any number of new sizes and the weights, but this again must be an entirely new design based on the same grid. Okay, so speaking of grid, don't forget you're supposed to lay one underlying grid on all four of these and use that underlying grid over and over. We can clearly see that you haven't done that. How can we tell, Tanisha? Very easily. Take a look at this margin here. Take a look at this margin here. So these are not using the same grid. Okay, so don't forget all four of your pieces should use the same underlying grid. Maybe even in your final you can submit a second iteration showing the overlaying grid on all of these pieces as a supplement to your second submission for your final iteration. I think that would show a better, really good adherence to the grid, as well as establishing these typographic relationships based on hierarchy. Okay, good job. Keep working at anything that comes up, questions, comments, concerns, or if anything comes up, please feel free to give me a holler. Okay, thanks, Tanisha.